Your dog walks outside, sniffs the air for half a second, and then lowers its head and starts eating grass. Not nibbling, eating. Big, deliberate mouthfuls, like it's been thinking about this all morning and it finally has the chance. 10 minutes later, you're watching it heave everything back onto the lawn. Grass and bile and whatever else was in there. You clean it up. The dog walks away looking completely unbothered. Not sick, not embarrassed, not even slightly confused about what just happened. And you're standing there with a paper towel thinking, what was any of that for? The explanation most people land on is that the dog has an upset stomach and is using the grass to make itself vomit. It sounds logical. The dog feels bad. It finds a solution. The vomiting provides relief, clean and simple, except when researchers actually tracked this behavior systematically across hundreds of dogs over time, the data didn't support it. Studies tracking dog behavior found that fewer than 25% of dogs that ate grass went on to vomit. And in the vast majority of those cases, the dogs showed no signs of illness before they started. No pacing, no lip licking, no restlessness. They weren't nauseous, they just wanted grass. They went outside and ate it the same way they'd go eat their food from a bowl. So the vomiting isn't the point, it's a side effect, an occasional one at that, which means the whole frame shifts. The dog isn't eating grass in order to vomit. The dog is eating grass for something else entirely. And vomiting is just what happens sometimes when the body runs that process. Stay with me, because what this behavior is actually doing goes a lot deeper than anyone expected. Now, the parasite problem. To understand what the dog is actually doing, you need to go back a long way. Before leashes, before veterinary clinics, before domestication. Back to the animal this dog came from. The ancestors of domestic dogs were wild canets living in a world with no antiparasitic treatments, no clean food sources, no way to reliably keep their guts free of organisms that wanted to live there. And like almost every large mammal alive, they carried intestinal parasites, roundworms, tapeworms, hookworms, organisms that anchor themselves to the intestinal wall, feed on what the host eats, and reproduce. The immune system recognizes them. It cannot simply remove them. Parasites are patient in a way that makes them almost elegant. In a horrible way, they don't attack, they settle in. They absorb a portion of whatever the host digests, slowly siphoning nutrients the animal needs to function, to stay warm, to heal, to reproduce. A heavy parasite burden doesn't announce itself with obvious symptoms. It just quietly drains the body week after week, until the animal that looked fine starts losing weight, starts tiring faster, starts struggling with things that should be easy. Grass, it turns out, is a mechanical solution to a biological problem. The fibrous blades pass through the stomach without breaking down. The digestive system of a dog simply isn't built to process plant cellulose, so the grass travels through largely intact. And as it moves through the intestinal tract, the texture does something remarkable. It works almost exactly like a brush along the gut wall, scraping the surface as it passes. The fiber physically dislodges parasites from the intestinal wall. It doesn't kill them, it detaches them and wraps them in the moving bundle of plant material. And then the body expels the whole thing, either upward or downward. Either way, out. The parasite load drops. The animal feels better. The mechanism works. It just has nothing to do with an upset stomach. And here's what stops researchers in their tracks. Dogs aren't the only ones doing this. On the other side of the world, scientists observing wild chimpanzees and gorillas in Central Africa documented the same behavior completely independently. They watched chimps go out of their way to find specific plant species and swallow the leaves whole, without chewing, without grinding them down, the way you'd eat something for nutrition. Just find leaf, swallow leaf, move on. The rough, bristled surface of those particular leaves did exactly what grass does in a dog's gut. It scraped the intestinal lining as it passed through. Researchers who tracked these animals documented measurable drops in parasite counts in the days after the leaf-swallowing behavior. The chimps weren't making a mistake, they were dosing themselves. Scientists called it zoopharmacognosy, the ability of animals to self-medicate using plants, and the more they looked, the more species they found doing some version of it. The behavior wasn't random, it was selective. Chimps bypassed dozens of other edible plants to reach the specific ones that worked. They returned to those plants when parasite symptoms appeared. They passed the knowledge between individuals. Younger chimps were observed watching and copying the behavior from older ones. This wasn't hardwired reflex. This was learned pharmacology, discovered, field-tested, and transmitted across generations before any human ever wrote a word of medicine. Now here's the part that should make you pause. Your dog has almost certainly never had intestinal parasites in its life. It gets dewormed, it eats processed food, it lives in a house with a bowl of clean water and a vet who runs blood panels. The threat this system evolved to handle simply does not exist in your dog's daily life. It hasn't for thousands of years. And yet, the behavior persists. Every morning, somewhere, a perfectly healthy, fully dewormed, veterinarian-approved family dog walks outside and eats grass. Not because something is wrong, not because it's confused, but because evolution doesn't clean up software it no longer needs. It just leaves it running. The system is far older than the problem is gone. Think about what that actually means. When your dog goes for the grass and comes back inside looking completely fine, you're not watching a confused animal doing something pointless. You're watching a pharmacological system, refined across millions of years of mammalian evolution in a world full of parasites, running quietly inside a creature that now sleeps on your sofa and has its meals measured in cups. The mechanism is ancient. The context is just completely different. That's the only thing that changed. And here's where it gets a little uncomfortable in a very personal direction, because humans do versions of this too. We reach for specific foods at specific times with an urgency we can't always explain. Certain textures, certain bitter or sour tastes, certain things the body just seems to insist on. The craving arrives before any reasoning does, and most of the time we just call it a preference and move on. Some of those cravings are ancient systems speaking from somewhere below the level of thought, the body running a protocol the rational mind can't read and wasn't asked about. We have the luxury of being puzzled about it in a kitchen. Your dog has the honesty to just go do it in the yard, in front of you, without any apparent concern for how it looks. Here's something to try. The next time your dog goes for the grass, before you pull it away, just stop and watch for a moment. Notice how deliberate it is. Notice that the dog isn't frantic, isn't distressed, isn't doing anything that looks desperate. It's just doing something it was built to do, in an environment it wasn't built for, with a calm that should probably make us curious about what else we're misreading. That dog on the lawn isn't broken. It's carrying something very old, a system that kept its ancestors alive through a world far more dangerous than a suburban backyard, still running quietly inside an animal that trusts you enough to just do it in front of you, without explanation, without apology, the way ancient things tend to run. If this changed how you see them, subscribe. We keep pulling apart the hidden systems behind the wild. The wild mind is everywhere around us. Keep looking. I'll see you next time.